evening. It is so wonderful to be here with you today. If you're joining this call, it's because you have interest in becoming a Prime Champion, or you are a Prime Champion who's interested to learn a little more, get a little more involved. It's a very exciting time. So this call is only ever opened up every 2 years. So this is kind of a good moment in time to be exploring this, because once it's closed, it's closed. But the champions are really such leaders within the Prime community, and you probably already know that just from being involved. We've had some really wonderful community moments this week and throughout last week with the UN General Assembly, and this being a major global forum in New York kind of year, we've all been able to connect wonderfully and widely as a bigger Prime community. But to have the Prime champions really being able to meet up and catch up through these processes, to have in-person moments, to have virtual moments, it's just been so wonderful. So we have the agenda here. We'll have this intro and welcome, a brief history of the champions, champions projects and values, what we're looking for and what we're hoping to collaborate with the champions for through the 26-27 cycle, and then the Q&A kind of side of things. So just to really introduce myself, if you don't know me, I'm Dr. Meredith Story. I have a PhD in Business Education for Sustainable Development from the University of Limerick ChemE Business School, which is a Prime champion. So way back when, I think it was probably only the first or second champion cycle, quite honestly, my school was a champion, and that is how I got connected with an internship in the Secretariat's office in 2015 when the SDGs launched. So I think just as far as living examples go, being a champion really provides a lot of opportunity for students, for educators, for leaders on the campus community. So that is what we hope to see through this process. Rumina, could I please ask you to introduce yourself too?
Thank you so much. I'm Ramina Dalla. I think the picture on the screen was me many years ago. I have been, I'm at the Gordon S. Lang School of Business and Economics at the University of Guelph in Canada. I'm an associate professor and the director of our Institute for Sustainable Commerce. I've been a long-term, member of Prime in all kinds of ways. Our school was I think one of the first champions, and we've been quite active. So yeah, I'm so glad to be here, and I thank you so much, Meredith and Samantha, for the opportunity to meet everyone here today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rumina. Sam, do you want to introduce yourself just because you're here and you're quite active amongst our cohort as well?
Sure, yeah. Just here supporting today, but good to see you all. My name is Samantha Thompson. I'm the coordinator of programs engagement, and I've been helping with some of our communities this year, primarily to get the call for champions out and supporting on the champion meetings. So good to be here. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be in the background while the presentation's going around, so I can field the questions, and we'll have time for live questions at the end as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Just to begin with what the champions is, I'm assuming that if you are on this call, you are like very aware of what Prime is to begin with, but we see ourselves as, that position for business education, responsible management education in contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals, the UN Global Compact networks, and that wider kind of UN framework, the common good platforms of the world, and to be uniting business schools. So the Prime Champions is kind of the pinnacle of that work. So this is a community within a community, but it's very strong. There's contributions made to thought and action leadership on responsible management and education. There's active projects that are going kind of in pursuit of that. The manifesto that Ramina will speak to in a little bit is one of our kind of prides through this, where it's examples of positive work that promotes positive forces for good. So there's a lot of merit to existing in the Prime community more widely, but also having this devoted community across the champions themselves. So to speak to my former experience with the champions as a community member, it really helps in further building the relationships and the dynamic, further seeing your work kind of through like-minded and passionate individuals who have that capacity to be attending a couple extra calls, to be attending more meetings, but to really be working towards the purpose of Prime and to be advancing this vision and values. Rumina, could I ask, maybe as we transition to history a little bit, would you have anything to add in there?
If I may, one of the advantages, I think, of being a prime champion, in addition to everything that Meredith outlined, is that it is, while most of us and many of us, and I would imagine all of us on the call here are quite involved with prime at a chapter level. The champions are sort of a group that is made up of people from all kinds of chapters. So you get to work with a really quite a global group. And I think that's one of for me, that's one of the advantages, because when you look at to collaborate, you can collaborate within your chapter, but then you can also collaborate with people across the prime champion community, which is quite, it's quite powerful for me.
That's very good. I absolutely agree with that experience. Could I ask, while we're on this slide, perhaps, would you speak a bit to the history, just as you've experienced as a member of the community, Rumina?
I've muted myself again. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so the history of the Prime Champions, I think we go back, if I've got the dates right, about 2013, when when a group of Prime signatory schools wanted to collaborate on a smaller scale, and I think that's when we became a champion school at Guelph. So basically, we were looking at becoming champions for Prime. So leaders show signatories and show others in your school and other schools what it really means to be a champion for Prime, to be hugely engaged in all the activities that Prime is so well known for, and to find a way to collaborate across schools in a way that's whether it's sharing curriculum or collaborating on research projects or sharing pedagogical innovations, or even supporting each other in our projects. I think that's how we started off. So this was around 2013. We were quite small, and we've been growing ever since, and it's become much more formalized. So in the past, I'd say the pre-COVID cycles, we started to really coalesce as a champions group with working around projects, whether it was, the SDG, I think it was called the SDG footprint or something. We started working on that together. So there's always a big project that we all work together on, and we contribute to, and we agree on as we start the cycle. So, we started to really function well as a group pre-COVID. Then we had a little bit of virtual meetings and all that stuff as we went through the pandemic. And now we're back to being in really strong force, working together. Am I going too fast, Meredith? Stop me if I am. But one of the wonderful things that happen is at the beginning of the cycle, we all get to propose sub-projects. So we have a big project that everyone is engaged in, and then we have sub-projects. And these sub-projects we sign on to. So somebody proposes and takes leadership, and then the champions can engage, and not just the champion representative, but the champion school faculty and students can also get engaged in. So it is a really wonderful way of not just collaborating with the representatives, but collaborating with others from that champion school as well. Does that sound right?
That is absolutely right, yes. And just to speak a little bit to the subgroup projects, you're a great ambassador for all of these. But historically, there have been some aligned to the Secretariat work. There have been some truly raw contributions from the community that then hopefully it grows and fosters with the support of the champions. But it's really such a wide scope. And so to just emphasize the ability to create pockets of interest within the champions for work that they might already be doing at their schools.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me give you a few examples. Can we talk about the manifesto here or later?
Please, we'd love to hear.
Okay, so one of the projects that we got excited about as a champions group in the previous cycle was that we were all very concerned about SDG 4, which is quality education, and how little we had been done globally around quality education. So we created a task force where we said, okay, what can we do so we were sitting around in one of our champions meeting in small group tables and said, what can we do? And we came across, we decided, okay, wouldn't it be great if we had a way to engage everyone on some really core activities. So we created the manifesto and we started developing the manifesto through a task force. So, champion representatives were invited to engage in a task force. We drafted a manifesto. We took it to consultation through the champions. We took it to consultations outside the champions. So in a bigger conference, the Responsible Management Education Conference, got feedback, and it's become live and it's on the Prime website, and people sign up on it, right? And say, oh, I commit to doing, and there's 10 things. So if you're excited and interested, have a look at those. But the thing is that it keeps getting, developed and reiterated. So for the next, for example, cycle, we will see how can we get more students involved in developing and signing on to the manifesto, maybe get more Prime signatories involved. So it's really a living kind of a project. And then we also have sub-projects. So for example, we have sub-projects on champions for climate leadership, or, what about reporting? How can we share ideas around reporting? So that's a sub-project that any champion school can sign on. There's been pedagogical, so teaching sustainability and how do you integrate it? What about experiential learning? What about how do we travel, right? How do we find a way to travel responsibly? All those projects are available for you as a champion school to participate in. And I think one of the wonderful things is while you work on the project, you also get to know other schools, and then you form friendships, and then you see champion representatives from year to year and form some really good working relations. So yeah, if I sound really excited, I am, because honestly, this is such a good group of collaborators who willingly give their time and try to connect on all kinds of different ideas, and then these projects actually become actionable and executed, and then you can see that they flourish. I think I'll stop now.
I love your enthusiasm for this, Ramina, and this is why we wanted to ask you, because you really are such an ambassador for this work. But you're not alone in this like kind of commitment to this community. There are so many. I feel like it's almost like a core group of friends that you can see within the champions, where you know each other and you look towards each other at conferences. Is there anything that you would add just as far as what it does for the network or anything like that? Because I do think you've really built a network through this.
Yeah, so it's not just, engaging in formal events with Prime, right? So Prime champions will get together and say, hey, who's thinking about going to a conference? So for example, the RMER or the Academy of Management or some other conference that they're engaged with, whether it's a national or whatever domain conference, and get together and talk, present, for example, a symposium. So we've done a symposium on the manifesto at the Academy of Management, invite the champion school representatives who are there, or we say, okay, well, is there a publication coming up that we can work on together? So it's not just within the Prime, but outside in your academic world, you can do projects, and always really thinking about how can we be champions for Prime, right? And get more participation and more engagement and more faculty excited about the work. So it gives you the opportunity not just to engage within this group or within your chapter or signatories, but really push it forward outside into the academic world. And the support we get is amazing. So for example, the Academy of Management that we had in Chicago, where we presented, there were publishers there. And so some of the faculty members got up an opportunity to talk to publishers. So it's amazing how it can grow, and the opportunity is there. The door, you just sort of have to reach out, and people will be there to support you and collaborate with you.
And I remember that session in Chicago too. It was an early morning one, but you all sure made a footprint there. And it's wonderful to go to conferences and events and to see the champions kind of participating as a cohort. It does feel like you all kind of have your own wings. Like Prime kind of gives a little bit of a roots and a context there, but you fly so well on your own. Even not just conferences that are organized out in the world, but I remember that SDG Roadshow that Alec Werson used to pilot, and just to be able to go around and create opportunities for engagement kind of through the Prime Champions lens, almost like giving that permission to validate it and to really excite folks in the Prime community, but also beyond the Prime community. So it's a great way to spread work, not just in the network, but beyond it as well. Yes. Is there anything you would add, or else I might hop over to what the call specifically looks like for this year?
Not specifically to add, but I'm really happy to answer questions. I mean, because, you know, the participation is key, right? Like to get more people engaged. So whether it's, you know, at the Prime Global Forum, where you can also connect with others, or, you know, like I said, you know, get invited to virtual conferences to speak in places. But the manifesto actually provides a guideline on how we might be able to contribute in a very structured kind of way. So, for example, I'll make, you know, as a champion, I commit to doing to talking about Prime when I'm at conferences, or I will find opportunities to talk about Prime and Prime, you know, responsible management education within the Prime community in other places. So what we do, for example, with the manifesto is that, you know, how do our subgroup projects then map onto the manifesto, and are there any gaps, and how could the subgroup projects then fill those gaps? So it becomes very much, you know, we got a bunch of academics who are sort of looking at it saying, okay, how do we make it so that we can operationalize it and execute it and make it accessible and available to others? So I think those kinds of things are really important, because the group is so well you know, so well established, and so the new entrants sort of get socialized into some of the things we're doing, and so the new, you know, the new champions find very quickly getting engaged. So, for example, at the last meeting we were at, we had a couple of new champion representatives, and right away we snagged them and put them on the task force for the manifesto so they could get engaged right away. So I think that part is really important to know, that you know, you're not sort of, as a champion, you're not an outsider. It's just, you know, you get enveloped, I think, if the right word, into the activities very fast. Yeah, I'm sorry, Meredith, going on a little bit.
No, no, no. I think get right socialized is exactly what happens there. It's a smaller community within the Prime community. It's not small. I mean, it's usually about 50 institutions, but there is that innate sense of trust and like a challenging for positive outcomes. Like no one's afraid to have open dialogue, especially about critical issues, but it never comes across in a you know, sometimes academics can be hyper competitive, and that is not the spirit that the Prime Champions bring forward. And I think that that's really beautiful, especially for the field that you all sit in, that is how it goes forward. So I'm going to look towards the focus of 26 and 27, and Romina, I'm sure you will have more than enough to add in with me here, but I did also plug in the manifesto link if anyone wanted to check it out. So there's a plug there. But for the 26-27 cohort cycle, the priorities that we've listed here include the manifesto as that overall project, to have those continued conversations and iterations around it. Ramina's mentioned a couple of times here the RME, our conference, which is the Responsible Management Education and Research Conference hosted through the Prime community, and the champions have specific events in person, some with virtual collaboration as well possible, but to be able to really do community building at the Global Forum, at other events throughout the year. But just, it's not a community that lives in isolation, that it does come through and come forward for these big events that really as Prime members you might have already been going to. So we piggyback those so it doesn't become an extra burden there. So within the cohort, we have the manifesto. Romina, you've spoken to that, but I'll go through the three, and then we can come back and see if there's anything else to add in on there. Prime Commons, which as it is October 2nd, and reporting would have officially been labeled to close 2 days ago. I hope everyone on the call is familiar with Prime Commons by now. Our digital reporting platform that we have been in year 2 of rolling out iterations for. So in this previous year, you're probably familiar with the questions changed a lot more to be around the purpose, mission, and values, but looking towards research, looking towards teaching, looking towards student experiences, leadership experience, educational experiences, and wanting to create narrative pathways so that we can learn from one another. Depending on how long you've been familiar with the Prime community as kind of audience members here today, you might remember writing SIP reports that were PDFs that were truly beautiful. They were really nice pieces to keep around the lobbies to be able to share with stakeholders when they came to the school. And they were useful tools for communication within the network. But when it came to the Prime Secretariat, we would be receiving, between 400 and 800 each year. And it wasn't possible to learn from all of the quality and the nuggets that were placed in those. So in this year's iteration of the Prime Commons, we've tried to work on that narrative building and those collaboration moments. And we see the experiences of the champions as being able to give really strong feedback initially into this process. One of the champions schools, Queen's Belfast, and then a few different others that have come across from there have been working on a champions commons reporting feedback process that we'll have 2 more webinars on for next week that's driven by the champions, but open to the Prime community. So just another example of champions is a good community, but it doesn't need to stop with the champions. It starts with the champions. And just to see that leadership come from the community has been fantastic. So shout out to Laura Steele if anybody is talking to her. And then the last one being the subgroup projects, so that we want to organize around themes and projects that are of relevance to you as members of the champion community. And Romina, you said it so well when you said champions for Prime. So we imagine that these subgroup projects are, of that DNA and values and mission and all of the things that kind of make Prime what it is. And so to have the ability to advance the work of those projects, those interest groups, focus groups, whatever it might be, within the champions cohort, to create a critical mass and to create energy around that. Romina, from your lived experience, anything else that we should put on this list, or anything else you'd like to kind of comment back to?
I think one of the things that I would suggest is that the champions projects really map on really well to the values, right? That Prime values, and so it's not just around teaching and sharing curriculum ideas, or pedagogies, which is really a big component. But it's big. We do some things related to research, some things related to our practice, right? How do we practice being Prime signatories and Prime champions in terms of our everyday day-to-day living. There's all those kinds of things as well, and also then some global issues. As you saw, the manifesto is around SDG 4. So one of the things that I really like about this is, while we have these subgroup projects that are at the Prime champions level, there's always sort of an understanding that there is a sort of a more of a global view as well. So, I think that that's really helpful to me, because it sort of connects what you do to what's really happening out there. And so, if you're interested in research projects, publications, if there is opportunities for us to go out, even connect to whether it's public policy or to schools, because some Prime champions are really interested in understanding not just higher education, but the education system itself. So we really look at it as projects, but also linked to a system, a perspective, and and then you get invited into events that are happening around. So, for example, at the Global Forum, you'll often hear speakers talk about theories of change or systems, or there are other networks there. So I think that's what I really love about being a champion school, is how connected we feel, not just to the group in present in the room, but the community, and then the larger community as well. And you may think that, well, it's overselling it a little bit, but I really am not, because we have been one of the earlier champions. We've seen the progress of what the champions have been able to contribute and do. And I mean, if you read the history, or you read the schools involved in the past, you'll see how much has been done and how ambitious we are going forward. So yeah, that's basically what I find is coming back, is that how connected this all is. With the commons is a really good way to touch, to keep in touch. And then there's all this, then you hear about all these new technologies that people are using in their schools, right? And so then you learn as an educator and as a researcher, you learn from each other on a different level as well. So it's a great community.
And you kind of subtly pointed out the fact that there are so many champions that have been involved since day one, but it is not an exclusive club. So we do seek to bring new folks. And as you mentioned before, there were a couple of people at the last meeting who just didn't have a subgroup project that they had an affinity for. They were new here, and you picked them right up and brought them into the manifesto. And I've seen that with the Commons work. I've seen that with other subgroup projects, and how excited you all get for each other's work, your craft. It's like summer camp. It's like going out and really finding that bit. So I'm very excited by how well you articulate this, Romina, because it does just feel like it's a good moment to get involved. And then one of the things I realized we hadn't said was historically, there was even a journal put out. Carol Parks was working with the International Journal of Management Education, and 2 different editions of that journal focused on prime and responsible management education are former kind of born of the champions too. So even truly like published, legitimized, peer-reviewed research has sprung from the champions cohort of the past. So just wonderful to see if that raises any questions, comments, or interests within the group there too. So Sam, I might go ahead to that eligibility criteria slide just so that everybody knows that if they're here, see if they check off all the good boxes. So being a community member and paying prime signatory, so an active status community member, exhibit a track record of existing engagement with the prime community, particularly at the local level, is of interest because, we have such vibrant and active chapters that is kind of a nice niche to start fitting into. But the champions community, as Romina rightly pointed out, is a different style of community. So happy to have collaborations in both, but just noting that building those local roots is of importance. Completing that application form, which I'm sure you've all seen by now, but we can also drop in the chat there. Sign a letter of commitment for 2 consecutive years upon receiving acceptance to the champion cycle. Very similar to how when you joined Prime, you had that highest executive letter. It's a reaffirmation kind of for the culture, for the mission, the vision, so that your dean, your rector, your president, whomever it is, knows like what the contribution is being made and knows to be active in that call, because really the work that the university, that the business school is doing is what's being showcased and what's being demonstrated. So we do want that to be kind of part of what drives this commitment here. And then submit to the Champions Contribution donation annually by April 1st of each year. And that's something that we manage internally and can have conversations about beyond this, but just the kind of fee, if you will, associated with the champion status to cover the costs. So the Champions commitment here, this is what it takes. Provide a signed commitment letter to the Champions program, which is what we've said there with the highest executive. Identify a core team of at least 3 people to drive an institution's commitment. So you've heard of some of the subgroup projects that we've listed here, and then how you can take that work back to your community, how you can bring champions along to institutionalize it and to build a culture for your core team within your institution. Champions isn't meant to be a singular champion. It is meant to be representative of the institution and to create a culture of championing prime and championing responsible management education. So just suggestions on how to make a community of practice there. But I do believe that so many people have kind of communities at their institution that are quite bigger than this, almost whole institution size. Committing to sending at least 1 representative to participate in the meetings. The meeting schedules are usually circulated as well in advance as we can based on the organizer's schedule, because we do try to piggyback on kind of main events within our ecosystem. So later this month, we have the Responsible Management Education Research Conference, as we mentioned. This year's is in Serbia. We had the Global Forum in New York this past year. Next year, it will be in Cairo, Egypt. So making sure that these things are communicated so that you can see where we will be, where you will be, and how we can all fit together through that process. And there's usually just a fun little plug, like a culture day or like a socialization event that goes along with that too. So while you might be traveling a bit of a distance to come to these events, it's not without smiles as well. So they like I said, a bit of a summer camp. There's always a good time to be had with the champions. The dissemination activities, projects, and discussions internally to the institution that that, again, it's not an isolation process. Explore and co-creation of implementation of subgroup projects with fellow champion schools. We do like to see involvement on at least one subgroup project. Usually it's richly onto one subgroup project, but there's no limit there. So just making that work kind of more relevant to the cohort. Demonstrating high levels of commitment and participation. So being active, being engaged, if you're willing to make this commitment, I think that goes without saying. And then along with that engagement, champions are requested to make an additional contribution to Prime. So this is what I was referring to as kind of the fee of the Prime champions. So there is like a bit of a cash flow that goes along with this, but that is to support the work in making these resources within the Secretariat and out in the community, and kind of all of that available to move forward. So Romina, is there anything from the commitment that you've lived out that you would say should be emphasized there or added on to?
Um, I think just being consistent in terms of attendance, right? I mean, if you're going to, the best way to do this is just to be consistent in participation, whether it's a virtual meetings, attending the actual meetings. If it's the same person, then that knowledge can be transferred. We try to have at least the same person plus one other, just to increase the sort of the reach of what we're learning in the discussions, and introduce others to champions. I would say that getting involved as much as you can, and it doesn't have to be you doing all the stuff, right? Get your institution as a champions involved, because it really does it, first of all, it's really helpful to the project, but also it's really helpful to get more people excited about the work of the champions and Prime. So for me, that's what it is consistency, persistence, and and put in the effort, because the rewards are there. So I think that for me, that is the best advice I can give. Incoming new champions as well as existing champions is don't be shy to put your hand up and say, hey, I want to do this, or I want to help you do that, or I want to get involved and engaged.
And I don't want to make any assumptions. This isn't part of even what I was thinking of when we were talking through this earlier, but your school being as involved as long as it has been in Prime, and then also through Prime Champions, I mean, you've had leadership turnover just naturally. You've had growth and development within the school, but you've remained a Prime Champion. So I think that does kind of speak to perhaps the value or the experience there. Is there anything you'd throw in on top of that?
I think it becomes part of your identity, right? I mean, if you keep doing it and you're engaged, and people are it becomes part of your SIP report. It becomes part of what you tell incoming students, and what you tell incoming faculty, and what you tell your stakeholders. It becomes part of your identity, that it's so deeply ingrained in what you do, that it really is you naturally just become a champion for Prime. I mean, you are present, right? And you have people around you, and that small group of people who are within, around you in your institution, and also around you in the champions, and also in your chapter. I mean, you just develop that network that becomes so ingrained and so institutionalized, that it becomes, I mean, it's just, we are just champions. So for example, you volunteer to host things because that's just what champions do, and you reach out and you connect people up, because that's what champions for Prime do. It just becomes authentically your identity, and I think that's just what it is over time. Is that you don't even it just is. So I'm not making much sense, probably. Sorry.
No. And it's funny because I don't like to approach things like this with a sales pitch, but what you just said there was you'll host events. Okay, well, that's service. You'll work together on research projects. There's your research. We work together on pedagogical projects and sharing of best practices that can be brought back to the classroom. There's your three-legged stool. If you do have to talk to your dean about making a value add kind of case for this, we definitely have the examples available. So I'm happy that so many people have chosen to join us today, and I'm happy that the community continues to grow. So just to go through key next steps for everyone on the call, the deadline for applications is a month away. So we've got November 15th. And then from there, we review the applications internally for, that the basic qualifications are met, and then read a bit more richly through. There's a short list which will be communicated, excuse me, and December 12th. That's really where kind of the transparent conversation starts. And then you'll have until January 5th of the new year in order to have a signed commitment letter from the highest executive, be it your dean or your rector, by then. The champion's official announcement is launched to the community on January 12th of the new year, and thus begins the cycle. Onboarding meeting on February 11th, and then from there we will have that kind of more regular schedule, the in-person events and all sorts of things that go along with the community building and the collaboration published out. So I believe that is absolutely everything we wanted to touch upon today. So we will pause there. If anyone wants to ask questions, there's the chat. I think there's also a Q&A, but please, please, please go ahead. Thank you for joining us. Right. If there aren't any burning questions, then Sam, I can stay on the line and see if anyone has kind of individual questions that they didn't want to ask in front of a large group. But we can go ahead and kind of do the class dismissed exercise and just thank everyone for coming along here today, because we do really hope to see you in the next cohort. It is such a special moment in time and really such a wonderful community. Romina, do you want any last words there?
No, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. I don't know how many we've done these before, but I think it's really helpful to have this. And you know, I just the support that you extend as a secretariat is much appreciated. Thank you both so much.
Thank you. Thank you.